Hey, Desiree.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning, Paulo.
Hello. Hello, Carl.
Yeah, how you guys doing? Good.
Yeah, Alex, I follow.
Thank you.
Today my neighbor is doing some noise, so I'm going to mute myself. Okay, Alex?
No problem. No problem.
Yeah. Okay. No problem.
Destiny, how are you?
I'm fine.
I see you on the road. Good morning, Calvin.
Morning, Alex.
Hey, Ron. Hope Canada is fine. Eddie Don.
Hey, how's it going? Everything's great.
Hello, Ron.
We're doing fine. We made it last day, the last lap here. Let's see, I'm connecting to audio for somebody up there. I'm trying to see your name, your face. So if I see, I will acknowledge you. You know, somebody's alarm, Zoom alarm. All right. Too much technology here. Yeah. Calvin, it's almost like I'm a drug dealer. I've got 3 phones. You know?
I believe it.
4 different numbers and stuff. I don't even use my Google number that much, but it was like,
How's Maryland?
oh man, we're all here. Everybody's tired, hoping that one way or the other we can know something by Friday next week about restricted.
Just make sure you take Bree on vacation soon, please.
Well, she already went to London, Paris, and Switzerland. So
wow.
it was boring. It was dry. So, but hey, Yannick, welcome. So we are trying to see what we're going to do in the next week or 2 weeks. Hopefully, we'll do that.
If all was normal, today we were in the beach.
Oh, you're in the beach?
If all was normal.
Yes.
If the corona doesn't exist in this hour, we were in the beach.
Oh yeah. That's true. We'll be on the beach, sitting down on the pool with sangria, right? Yes. And Calvin will come over there wearing full gear. All right, let's not tell our secret to the rest of the people here.
Please.
We hope that. All right, so it's 10:03, guys.
Can I do 2 questions?
Yes.
When you say the purchase a device that can be used in their RV, what means RV?
Okay, moving vehicle. That's an American this thing. Like RV stands for recreational vehicle. You know, like those vacation trucks, big cars.
Oh, okay. I see. I got it. It's a moving vehicle. Okay.
Yes.
It makes sense.
Yeah, that's the reason why that question has. You know, sometimes when you read some of these test questions, you always wonder whether they are too culturally specific.
Yeah, you know my English, man.
No, it's not the English thing. It's the people in Nigeria might not know what an RV is. It's just that when Americans are designing some questions.
The second question is, what is the difference between a SUO router and the other router, a normal router? What is the special thing in SOHO routers? They always talking about SOHO routers. What is?
Yeah, so SOHO is small office, home office. So usually that's what people have at home. One main thing about SOHO, if you remember when we're talking about routers and switches and access points, usually the SOHOs have everything functionality combined. They have a built-in firewall, so you don't need to go and buy separate equipment. Whereas say in your office or in an enterprise environment, you will probably have a separate router, you might have a separate firewall, you might have a separate access point. Like at the university, part of where you teach, if you go there, if you go to their network center, you notice they've got a router and they've got a bunch of switches in there.
Yeah. I already teach that routers and switches and wireless devices all separated, but I understand because I didn't understood the small office router. This is the Yeah.
They call that gateway.
The last
Yeah.
question is.
So, but wait. So, in some of those schools now, each of the buildings they would have other access points. Whereas if you're at home, you just buy
Yes,
one
of
device.
course, of course.
Go ahead. The other one.
Okay. The last one is just there was a question about protocols, and
Yes.
the proposal is browser-based file sharing, and
Okay.
it says HTTP and FTP. I
Yes.
can use both on browsers. Why HTTP is the correct choice? Because I can use FTP on browsers too, or FTPS to
But yeah, but
browsers.
the problem with is that FTP is strictly more for just file transfer. It's more for file transfer, right? So I'm using
So
the file transfer
the
protocol.
browser-based protocols is always to HTTP or HTTPS, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
But if you're also in networking, because some people will disable port 20 and port 21, which is for FTP, and since you still want your employees or clients to be able to surf the internet, you will leave port 80 open or port 443 if you're doing HTTPS, all right?
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Desiree, we're going to say something about a gateway or something.
No, I was talking about people, they have modems separately and which call today gateway. So
Okay.
you don't play the modem separately.
Right.
You know, make sure you have everything on one.
Yeah. So Desiree also has a lot of experience in some general networking and setting up devices. All right. So let's see. I think we are being fair enough. Today being the last day, I can now go ahead and close the class. I've given 2 more minutes to everybody so that we can continue.
How are you, Alec?
Hey, Remy, how you doing? How's London?
Hey, we're here.
How's your prime minister?
Hey,
I heard he's out, right?
he's covering. He's coming out of it.
He's coming out of it. All right.
Yeah.
So let's. Some people were late yesterday. I'm still waiting for somebody that asked for permission to join a little late yesterday, and was like, "Why did you lock my class?" So let's see. I don't see. Okay, Ugo, you're on. How you doing, Ugo? All right, from Florida. Absent of that, let's see what we can do here. So I'm gonna now lock the class so that we can. It's similar to physically locking your classroom, right? Go and padlock it so any student cannot come in after that. Yeah.
Virtual world.
Yes, but so that we can, so that I can at least it makes it easier to teach. We try to be respectful of everybody's time. Everybody's busy, so at least if somebody else can come in, I sacrifice and be on time, especially since we are adults.
Yeah.
It makes sense that I should respect the other students. So when you're teaching, there are different approaches when you're using andragogy and pedagogy. So obviously andragogy is when I am dealing with older adults, mature students, right? So we don't treat the mature students like they are, Nigerian people say they are small picking, right? However, we expect that they will have some kind of responsibility to know that we have time restrictions. All right, everybody sees the full screen of the PowerPoint, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Yes, sir.
so today we're going to do about security. It's a major area of IT. You guys have to bear with me. For the past 4 days, you will not know, but I've been teaching with some serious pain, neck pain. So I've just popped myself with a 1,000 milligrams of ibuprofen, so my neck will not be stiff. It is well.
You'll be fine, sir.
So
our prayer.
yeah, amen. That also means that I'm a little behind on the exam questions because I have over 100 and something, and I only want to give you 100 questions with 1 hour. So I'm amending the questions, editing. I was up to midnight editing. So I'm going to extend the time to complete the exam. Once I finish posting it, it's all going to be automatically graded. I'm putting it on PowerPoint. It's true or false questions, and then multiple choice. So it'll be easier for you to do.
All
right. So security concern, we want to talk about the different threats, so confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Talk about social engineering, BCP, which we call business continuity, And then, of course, DRP, disaster recovery plan. Don't worry if that doesn't mean any sense. I'll try and explain a little more. So all of cybersecurity, it all boils down to what we call the CIA triad. So somebody talking about cybersecurity, which somebody like Calvin is also an expert in, just know that it's about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So everything I'm thinking about, I boil it down to, hey, what is the threat? Is it a threat to my confidentiality? Is it a threat to integrity of the document or the person, or availability of the document? So every malware or every problem with cybersecurity boils down to one of those three. You know, you might have somebody talk about non-repudiation. That just means somebody cannot deny, but mainly cybersecurity has to do with those CIA triad. So in computer security, our whole issue is, how do I control who has access to resource? Resource in cybersecurity or in IT in general means individuals, my computer, my server, my web server, my data. Those are my resources. But the problem is, if I have my security too tight, nobody can enter. That means there's no availability. So you always have to balance all those three together. All right, so confidentiality, I'm going to move this thing to the side here. I mean, part of your concern with confidentiality relates people who are snooping, people who are eavesdropping, wiretapping would more be actually on the device, or sniffing, trying to see what you're doing. And of course, social engineering and dumpster diving. Dumpster diving just means the person goes into your trash can or what you try to dispose of to get sensitive information. The reason why you do that is that the reason why you want to counter that is to make sure you shred your documents, and preferably use a shredder that's a zigzag shredder, so they cannot put the paper down and try and read what you've shredded. Then so I've got confidentiality concern, right? So now what about integrity? We have what's called man in the middle. Man in the middle just means, without getting lost in the weeds here, it just means somebody steps in the middle between two people who are communicating. So if Remy and Calvin are communicating, I step in the middle and I'm either snooping or sniffing information between them. I am now a man in the middle. It's like a middleman in a sales transaction. Replay just means maybe I stole your credentials and later on I go and I log in to pretend to be you, which obviously ties into impersonation. I'm pretending to be you and I'm not you. So concerns for availability. This is an overview of cybersecurity. If you want to get more detail, I might remove some of the questions. I think I may have a question on the exam on encryption. I want to make sure that it's not too technical, but I'm still reviewing them. So what about availability? Denial of service, which is what, if you heard of the WannaCry virus, I make sure that you cannot get into your system unless you pay me money. That's DOS. The difference between DOS and DDoS is DOS, I'm using one device. DDoS, I'm using multiple devices. You hear the word botnet or zombie system. I've got one master that is controlling it. I always make the analogy, if you like vampire movies or Living Dead movies, imagine Night of the Living Dead. You got all those zombies. The difference is that with DDoS, I have somebody that is controlling them like a master, right? And you hear the word botnet, which means a robot network. So also, I might have power outage. My hardware could fail, destruction of my hardware or my information, or service outage. Service outage, obviously, I might not want to deny you access to your computer in exchange for ransom. I just want to make sure you're not available. So maybe I want to knock out your network, maybe so that I can commit some other kind of crime, or so you can lose money. So tied to this is...
I don't think he's there. I think he got kicked off. He'll log back in.
There he goes.
He will log back in. I think he's disconnected.
There was a crash on Alex.
We can't hear you.
Do you guys see me?
Yes.
All right,
Now
good.
we are listening to.
What happened? There's a hacker?
It's technology somehow got knocked off. Might be a
There was
bandwidth,
a hacker.
you know?
One of those things we're learning.
No hacker yet.
Okay.
No hacker yet. Hopefully we've changed everything we're supposed to be changing.
Yeah, I was scared when I wasn't seeing you.
Okay. So everybody's back on. Make sure nobody was knocked off. Good. All right. So we were on. Are you seeing this? You see my slide now, right?
Yes.
All right. Good. So we were talking about. Hopefully, the last thing you heard me say was about authentication. Did you guys hear me on this slide here? No?
Yes.
Okay, I was on authentication. So, all right. So I was explaining that sometimes people use the word accounting when they're referring to auditing. This one right here. But they're slightly different, but maybe you don't need to know the nuance of those distinctions. But here, let's see. Let's go back to. All right. So access control system means how am I going to control who accesses my computer? But authentication, you're just going to prove who you are to me. You're telling me about your identity and your password. But I always like to distinguish to people and tell them that authentication is not really, your username is not part of your authentication. Authentication is really more about your password. All right, so let's go to authorization, which just means, so I've allowed you into my system, but I need to decide what I'm going to let you do while you're on my system. So that part becomes giving you access to resources and accounting to see what has happened on my system. Auditing, you know, in other words, I go back and I say, hey, who logged onto my system and what did they do while they were on my system? So social engineering, let's move this bar up here a little so everybody can see me. All right, got the grid view going. All right, I want to make sure I don't lose anybody yet. Let's check and make sure everybody's on. All right, good. All right, so social engineering basically just means I want to trick you to reveal confidential information. So those in cybersecurity know that I don't just do it at once. I build it piecemeal step, like small steps at a time. I maybe I go to the internet and I find out your name, your company, your position in the company, your email address, and I wait and I get more information. I go to Facebook and I see what you're doing, your children's name, because sometimes people use their children's name as their password. And I come back again, I said, okay, before I now try to hack into your system, right? Oh, you don't make an effort so that it does not cause an avalanche. All right, let's see if I can, that was Eddie Dong. Eddie Dong, can you mute yourself? All right, I muted you then. All right, so the whole information point here is you have to be careful what you share on social media. I'm sorry, I know everybody wants to celebrate their children's birthday, their vacation in Santo Domingo, whatever, but those things are valuable information that people can use to hack into your system. All right, so impersonation, trust, and dumpster diving. I mentioned dumpster diving already. Be careful how you discard your information, right? Impersonation explains what it is that I'm pretending to be somebody I'm not to get information. In the US, we always say identity fraud. It's not a question about if you've been a victim of identity fraud. The question is when you're going to be a victim of identity fraud. So I've been a victim of identity fraud, so you just try to minimize the damage that somebody can do. But I've seen people try to pretend to be me on Facebook, somebody pretend to be me filing tax return or whatever, but you just have to be careful. So identity fraud, they just masquerade as someone else and then exploit the information that they get. So shoulder surfing, we mentioned it the other day. I'm looking over your shoulder to gain access to information. And the solution to shoulder surfing is basically privacy screen and being aware of your environment. So it says on here, end user education and training is a big area of IT. You can have a profession or career just training people on being aware of social engineering tricks and stuff, right? But you can also make sure you have security policies, proper support procedure. As I said, you can have screen locks. So there's a big attack called a lunchtime attack. That's basically when you're going to lunch, or you can call it a break attack. You just walk away from your desk and then someone will come behind you and start using your computer. So you always want to have screen locks. And of course, identity badge, escorting visitors, and secure doors. Those are some ways to defeat social engineering. Business continuity and fault tolerance. Remember earlier on I said fault tolerance just means I have an extra device or redundancy. So if I have a redundant component, extra server, extra power, then when one goes out, the next one kicks in. So the single point of failure, like Paulo asked at the beginning. Paulo, can you hear me?
Yes, I do, Alex.
Okay,
I only muted.
Yeah, so we talked about Soho, right? So the problem with Soho is they introduce a single point of failure. Which means if your device fails, you don't have any switch, you don't have any router, you don't have any firewall. So when people use what call unified devices, they introduce single points of failure. Obviously, people who try because of money, they try to buy an all-in-one device, but it introduces single points of failure. So
in companies you have redundancy, or correct?
Yes, it's better to have redundancy. Yes, so you can avoid single point of failure, right? So like here, for example, now the next slide talks about RAID or data redundancy. We call them redundant array of independent disk. You heard people say irrelevant disk or whatever to make a joke about what the I. So RAID. So with RAID, he only talks about RAID 1 and RAID 5. There are other types of RAID configuration. But mirroring just means if I put two disks, everything I have on disk number 1, I repeat it on disk number 2. That way, if I lose disk number 1, I can use disk number 2. So we also have other ways of doing it. Like you have striping, which means I'm putting part of information on one, part of information on the second one. I go back and forth. The problem with striping, obviously, by itself is if I lose one disk, I've lost a part of my data. But RAID configuration, RAID 0, RAID 5, RAID 1.0 is another area of storage devices that you can learn. So, but it's telling you on here that just because you have a RAID configuration, it's not a replacement for having your system backups. Network redundancy, I need to have multiple NIC, network interface cards, or they call them network adapter cards. And it's not just even for redundancy, but also for load balancing. Just load balancing means my network will try and, if I have like 2 network interface card, I'm using 2 network, try and balance the load so one doesn't get overloaded. Like now how you saw I think my system almost went off, I'm kicked back in. If I had a redundancy here at home, you automatically switch to the next one. All right, and of course, what that means is also I can have multiple paths to get to nodes, which just means to get to other hosts. So if one link had failed, you just choose another alternative path. It is invisible to the end user. When you implement redundancy, the end user doesn't know that. All right, power redundancy, same thing. All of these data centers, whether it's Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they always have redundant power supply because they don't want their system to go down. So they've got not just UPS, but they also have backup generators and they have dual power supply. So it will switch automatically in between and you will not even notice it. And of course, the circuits are also extra circuits. So site redundancy and replication basically means I have another office, which I have everything in there, which could be expensive. But people do this so that if you have exact redundancy or replication, it's called a hot site. So if hurricane blew out your office in Florida, the one in Maryland will automatically kick in because you have everything exactly in the other location. So you can imagine that costs a lot of money. So there is in cybersecurity or in general as it relates to backup, you have the word disaster recovery plan and business continuity plan. They are all tied together. Business impact analysis. I've already made an analysis, or people call it business impact assessment. I've already looked and said, okay, what will happen if my company was to go down, or if there was a terrorist attack, or if there was COVID-19, what will happen? So I need to have plans to continue my business. So disaster recovery plan, or DRP, just means I need to figure out under some situations, how do I continue my business? How does my work continue? So I look for major and minor scenarios and I plan appropriately based on my budget. How do I restore my data? How do I restore access to my system? I need to prioritize my service. Clearly, emergency room services may be prioritized over elective surgery services. Telephone VoIP may be prioritized over general data. But even with data, my maybe patient website, we have a priority over my drug ordering website. All right, so that's basically on that issue about the threats to confidentiality, integrity, and availability. All right, any question if I go to best practice? All right, good. I think it might even be a good idea to check on here to see about something about the students here. Let's see. All right. All right. So on best practices in security, because everything today we're doing is security. That's why you see the let's go back here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, good. All right, so we're talking about security. What is the best practice in cybersecurity? I am doing a blog and an article on how to start a career in IT/ICT and cybersecurity. Maybe after a week break, I can post it. But there are best practices for IT or IT security in case you decide you want a career in cybersecurity or just end user advising. So here, this section, we want to look at how do I harden, make it stronger, make my computer system stronger against attacks. And then I'm going to talk briefly about different types of malware and how do you identify spam and phishing, and making sure you have your patches or your updates installed. So making my device stronger in IT security is just called device hardening. And part of the securing devices also includes making sure I have antivirus, anti-malware, patching, making sure my updates are set up, enabling password, making sure I get rid of default and weak passwords, and of course, disabling unused features and removing unwanted or unnecessary software. We call this one, if you remember, bloatware, B-L-O-A-T, eliminating bloatware from my system. All right, so computer viruses, there's different ways you can tell if your system is infected. But first, you have viruses that attack to a program, you have macro viruses, and then you have worms. Worms, I think I said it maybe 2 days ago, they don't really need your help to do anything. They propagate without any help. I always create the visual image. Some people have not seen worms on the ground, but if you're from some part of the world or you live in the woods, you'd have seen a worm on the ground. It usually is crawling by itself. So that's what a worm on your system is. It's just crawling by itself. And we talk about a payload, just like when I'm sending you a regular, legitimate network packet, which I have a header and a payload. Same thing with a virus, computer virus, right? But also, what is the best way to deliver virus? Because I can sit down there and I can design the best WannaCry virus or any other virus, WannaSmile virus, whatever I want to call it. I've created it, or I can sit down in Wuhan, China, and create the next COVID virus. I still have to deliver it to people. I have to transmit it somehow. Usually, the best way is email attachments. Forcing employees to click links. That's why employee user education is very, very important. And of course, if I have auto-run media, same reason why on your system, you should disable auto-run when somebody puts a USB in their USB slot, because that's an easy way to introduce your virus. And then application exploit for those who are in programming, like Paolo and them. I can send you to a website, and it's called, just by visiting the website, it's called a drive-by download. I'm going to download malware by mistake, besides other stuff like cross-site scripting, which you don't need to worry about, but just know that I can exploit applications to deliver malware. Yesterday, we talked about Trojan, which is basically a virus that seems like it's selling you something good, but it has bad purpose. Okay. And then spyware is what it is. It's spying on you. And of course, ransomware, it goes usually with DDoS. If you see that diagram there on the bottom, that's the one from WannaCry or a typical ransomware. It has a padlock. Pay me money. Oh, can somebody tell me what is a good antidote to ransomware? What's a good solution to ransomware?
I don't reveal my credit card details.
Well, you could. That one is just for me to speed. That's spyware. Okay. Well, let me ask you this way: if your employee had mistakenly clicked a link, and I'm not telling you got to pay me $1 million to release your system, right? Because what it is I've encrypted your file. So until you pay me the money, then I will give you the key to decrypt your files, right?
That's ransomware.
Yeah, that's ransomware. So what's a good counter to that? How can I solve that problem?
Having backup data somewhere.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Calvin. Have a backup. So like in one hospital here in Maryland or Baltimore, I think last year, early last year, they had a ransomware attack. I think a nurse or an admin mistakenly clicked something and they asked them for $70,000. They told the person, go to, you know what, HE double hockey sticks, because they had backups. So that's why when we talk, I'm going to talk about backups here in a minute. So when I get to this section, I'll skip it real quick. So that's why you want to make sure you have backups.
The attackers now are telling the victims they expose the information if they don't pay the ransom. Even if they have backups, they need to pay the ransom.
Yes. So the question now is, I want to expose your information. So the question becomes how sensitive that information is, right? So if I've got like your healthcare records or something, then yeah, if you don't pay, then I will expose it, right? A typical example would be Jeff Bezos of Amazon.
Yeah,
so
correct.
You all know we say that WhatsApp is very secure, but WhatsApp uses the platform created by Signal. So the story supposedly is that when Jamal Khashoggi of the Washington Post was writing bad information about Saudi Arabia, Jeff Bezos owns Washington Post, and he's the best friend to one of the princes of Saudi. So this is the alleged story. I will use the word alleged. That's where the lawyer in me kicks in, okay? They said that somebody sent Jeff Bezos a malware here. They sent him a payload through his WhatsApp phone number. And once he clicked that payload, he downloaded a virus into his system. And that payload was a Trojan. It looked like it was something, like a picture of him and the prince or something. By doing that, he now downloaded it. And let's see, somebody's on here. Let me see here. He now downloaded that. And of course, I'll get to it in a minute, right? So, and as a result, they were able to access his phone and get secret conversation between him and his mistress. So they were telling him that you should either rein in your stories, do something, or we're going to expose that information. So he was being blackmailed supposedly because the information was given to the guys that own, they said they are friends with Trump, that own a tabloid newspaper. And you know, obviously they said that Trump and Amazon, they don't get along. That's why they gave the contract for what's called JEDI, the $10 billion contract to Microsoft and AWS. So you see how all of this is connected. So ransomware can be pay me money in cryptocurrency or do something for me in exchange, or I will reveal the information. So that's why you make sure that you find a way to, you're gonna have to make a decision. So Paulo is right, having a backup, they might mean I'm gonna expose secret information. And you have to decide, is it worth paying the ransom, or do I decide to just tell them I'm gonna go get my backup and not be victim of that. So Eddie, go ahead.
Oh, okay, sir. So thank you very much. Sir, please, I have an experience I would just like to share.
Yes.
Let me just rush through it so I can understand what really happened. Some years back, I think about 6 years ago, I had a lecture somewhere in the remote part of Nigeria.
Yes.
So I couldn't get access to my bank account. So I decided to go to the bank and register for online
banking.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when I got to the bank, they gave me some forms, which I did. I filled the form, submitted it. So the banker told me they'll get back to me in few days' time. So when I got home, I got a call from someone that I should check my email address.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately I opened my email address, I saw an email from the bank.
Yes.
So I opened the email, clicked on it, and coincidentally, it was all the information that they required in the bank that they actually needed me to insert in the
Yeah.
platform.
That's a fantastic one. Yes. Go ahead.
Which I did.
Yes.
After doing that, few minutes time, someone called me and told me, and asked me if I were the one that went to the bank to register for online banking. I said yes.
Yes.
And I did. The guy said, okay, that what's going to happen? They are going to send me some digit numbers, which
Yes.
I'll have to read to him.
Yes.
He did not come out to tell me it's going to be a token.
Yes.
So I said, okay, no problem. Few minutes time, an SMS came into my phone with some digits.
Yes.
He called me and requested for the digits, and I called the digits to him.
Yes.
It wasn't up to 1 minute. Some funds went out of my account.
Yes.
about
That's actually
about
very
20,000 naira. So
yes.
immediately I saw that, I knew, oh, this guy has scammed me.
Yes.
He's not from the bank. So to cut the whole story short, with that experience, I now knew that there are some bankers that might be there. They are not good people.
Okay. Well, let me tell you what that scenario is so that we can hurry up to the rest of the slide. So there's two things that could have happened there. First of all, the email that you received with the link for the bank, right?
Yes.
Whenever you get a link, you pass your mouse over the link and you look on the lower left-hand corner of your screen and make sure that it's the bank website address, because somebody could have put a link with a fake hyperlink, right? But we always advise you to just go ahead and type in the bank information yourself on a URL directly and then go there. But sometimes you might not know the whole string, right? So somebody in the bank could have been in cahoots, or somebody just knew your email address. So sometimes once you click that link, you've already exposed your information. That could be one scenario. The second scenario is that it was actually a legitimate bank link that you clicked and you entered your information, right?
Yes.
But somebody already knew that you're going to do that. And you have enabled two-factor authentication on your phone, or what we call you got an OTP, one-time code from the bank. So the social engineering trick that the guy did for you, he knew when he recreated your information on the website, but because he knew you already enabled dual multi-factor authentication, when he tried to do something to your account to take the money the first time, they told him that they're going to send a code to the phone that's attached to the account.
Okay.
So he now said, okay, so what you could do is, in that scenario, you just say, it will ask you, and you can now say, okay, send the code. So what he did now was now call you and tell you, okay, we're going to send a code to verify. And he now clicked on his end, the link that says send the code to verify. And then you now send the code. And of course, at that time, he took away your money, right?
Yeah.
But most banks in Nigeria, like if I'm doing banking here, I have my little
token.
This thing that, yes, I click it and it gives me a code. So you can easily call me and ask me for the code. So you were doing a soft code as opposed to a hardware token code.
Okay.
So that's what it is, right?
Okay.
Right. So that just tells you, always be careful. Don't give away your information. And banks will not call you and tell you to give that code. Even if you have that kind of security, they will tell you to put it in the website, right?
Right.
So we're sorry for your experience, but it's a good learning now, right?
Yeah.
All right. So operating system vulnerabilities. To make sure that you're not vulnerable to operating system, that's why I told you to register and activate, and please don't buy bootleg copy, because patch means releases of vulnerabilities that you need to implement on your system to solve problems or vulnerability that they already discovered. There are sites that have what's called CVE, common vulnerability exploits. They have numbers. You go there, it tells you all kinds of exploit. And there are companies that pay you money to find vulnerabilities in operating systems or software. So just know there's actually a business in it. It's a question of, it's a gray area or legitimate business, but just know that it exists there. Preventing malware infection, risk, it's on safe website. It goes through that and tells you 0-day exploit just means nobody have seen that already yet. It has never happened. It's the first time you click on it. So there's no patches for that. There's no CVEs for that yet. So you want to reduce by always backing up your data, apply your patches, always scan, and please limit administrative privileges, which is what I told you. Have a general user account and control file execution, right? So there are lots of antivirus software. Be careful about the ones that you buy or use. And one good way of having Trojan is offering you free antivirus software, because everybody seems to like free stuff. Nigerians will say affair, you know, people love affair, which is very dangerous. Just be careful, right? Make sure you, as soon as somebody enters your system or puts a device, scan it immediately. So on the access, scan it immediately. And of course, you should schedule your scanning, preferably quick scan all the time or within specific time, but a deep scan, maybe off hours. And always look at your report. So quarantine and remediating, you know, some antivirus will tell you, oh, we found suspicious site. What do you want us to do with it? Do you want us to try and clean it? Do you want us to put it in a quarantine, like we are all under quarantine now? Similar. We are under quarantine because of COVID-19. You can quarantine the software or certain things that you see on your system. And actually can also quarantine computers on your network, just like you quarantine an individual. Similar terminology here. Windows Defender is free with Windows 10, and most people tell you that it's awesome, it's nice. Just make sure you configure it and set it up. Spam is another kind of malware. It just means you get unsolicited email or ads. Try not to click hyperlinks, like I just said to Eddie Dung, and be careful about attachments. Sometimes they look very good. You'll be like, oh, like I'll send an attachment saying, this is the notes from class today as an example. You're like, oh yeah, that looks really, really good. But the reason why like Zoom implemented some of the security is, if I knew everybody was on here and I got on the Zoom class without authorization, I can easily send private chat to everybody or somebody on this side. So let me say I look at Calvin now. Say, oh, Calvin is a millionaire, right? So I'll send Calvin a private message. Hey, Calvin, this is the notes. I know you're busy. Here are the notes from the class. Calvin clicks the attachment and bam, I infect his system and then steal all his millions of dollars. Right, Calvin?
Exactly. I wouldn't click on it.
All right, so
Hope not,
phishing.
Alex.
Phishing, we talked
I
about.
open all your emails.
You open all the email. So we talked about phishing yesterday, 2 days ago, just to know what that is. And then anti-spam, always check your junk email and make sure that you authenticate and make people are identified and prove who they are. We already said yesterday, please get your software from legitimate sources. You see OEM there. Abandonware would be like Windows 7, which is a software that is no longer being supported by the manufacturer. That's just another terminology. So you already heard about bloatware, freeware, firmware. Now you're hearing abandonware. It's another terminology. And signed code just means something, obviously, that has been signed by, digitally signed and verified to be from a trusted site. So patch management, nowadays, well, let's go back to say Windows 7, Windows 8. You always have like patches, and then you now have service packs. Service pack contains several patches before a new version of the operating system is released. It's just to fix bugs or vulnerabilities or security problems that they've determined that software has. So you always want to make sure. Patch management means you want to make sure you apply the patches. In an enterprise environment, you apply the patches in like either a sandbox or in a test place before you bring it to production. But for you at home, you can just immediately apply your own patch. Let's see here. Windows update, just configure the scheduling of updates. Like now, it told me my system, there's some updates. Do I want to restart my computer? Right? All right, let's see here. Somebody's having fun at Eddie Dung's house. All right. I was enjoying the monkey jumping on the bed, but sorry, Eddie Dong, we just muted you. All right, quality updates they installed. So here, this is a new terminology. Technically, there are quality updates and there are feature updates. So quality updates, you need to install them regularly, usually daily. Features updates, they just introducing new functionality. Like maybe, oh, now I can have 3 virtual desktop or whatever it is, but it's not going to really affect my system. It's just more for maybe aesthetics. Those ones you can decide how you want to update them, right? That's just a distinction in there. All right, and now on trying to keep to the time. Good, we are doing well on time. All right, so application updates, antivirus update. Please make sure your antivirus update are always on time, because every hour they might discover new viruses. And antivirus software, most of them are based on like maybe signature, meaning that we've discovered a new virus that behaves a particular way or something. So you need to update, and it's based on a database. They just run like a file check or database to say, oh, this is a virus that looks like this. So let's not allow that program to to run on your system. And of course, driver updates, we talked about it before. You go through your system here, right click on the Windows, and then you could manually install an update from the original equipment manufacturer site, right? Right, so if somebody asks you what is device hardening, it means making sure I'm making my system more difficult for somebody to penetrate by having different antivirus software. If you get to networking, segmentation is also part of hardening your device. Having firewall, those are also issues of making your system more difficult to penetrate. This is the last lab in the class. So just to take a poll, who has finished all 20 labs? I knew we couldn't finish all 20 labs, right? Not yet, right?
Impossible.
So please,
no time for that at all.
try and find time to be doing the labs, right?
Yeah.
All right, so continuing. Oh, by the way, you're going to get 2 videos today because of the little drop, unless Zoom was able to combine it together. So access control. So how do I control access to my system? We already talked about identification as well as authentication, but we're going to go over it briefly here. And this thing about authentication factors, you need to know those things, and encryption techniques. All right, so access control to my system, basically, let me move this mouse on here. Let me move this up here. All right, so I can do this by having maybe the subject, which is the person, and the object, which is the item they want to get to, or I can create an access control list, which are called ACL, about how you can get into my system based on maybe your network ID, based on different things, MAC address, whatever I choose to do. But here, terminology, identification is basically your username on some kind of ID. But authentication is basically to tell me, who are you? I want you to prove to me who you are. And of course, authorization is I'm going to decide what I'm going to give you access to after you've authenticated yourself. And again, we already talked about accounting or auditing to see what happened on my system. So if you notice that accounting happens afterwards, or auditing happens afterwards. So we have the doctrine of least privilege and implicit denial. Least privilege means I want to give you as few rights as possible to do your job. I don't want to give you more than you need. And an implicit denial means that unless I grant you access, you're denied. So I have to explicitly give you access, otherwise it's denied. In other words, I'm going to have to give you access to say, if you notice, when I share the videos, you have to request access, because Google Drive has an implicit deny if you're not in a Tower Group. So you know the umbrella companies are Tower Group, then you got Tower Technologies, Tower Training Institute. So unless you have an email address that says at towergroup.com, you cannot access those files. I have an implicit deny for everybody, so I have to actually grant you access. So here, what are called authorization models. You should know this. This DAC just means the owner of the file decides who to give you access to. Like I own those videos, so I decide who I'm going to give access to. So discretionary access control, or DAC, is done by owners. So now role-based is one of the best and most common ways of granting access to files. It'd be like, if you are a secretary, you have rights for secretary. If you're a manager, you have rights for managers. And then mandatory access control, some of you might not see that. That's if you work in a secure environment, like some people here worked in jobs that requires clearance level. So you will be like, okay, if I have secret clearance, I can access documents that have secret clearance stamped on them. And of course, rule-based, basically just anyone where I define the rules. Many firewalls are rule-based access control. And then here, I need you to know this. I said auditing and accounting are similar. This new terminology is non-repudiation. It just really means that I cannot deny that I did something. Okay, in other words, I sent the document, I cannot deny that I sent it. You use stuff like digital signature or whatever kind of receipt, but that's all non-repudiation means here. User account types, we talked about that. Make sure you have general users. And most of the time, guest account must be, I call it disabled. Today now is disabled in Windows, but if you remember those days, older versions of Windows always had guest account. Now is disabled by default. Group accounts, which is for enterprise environments, a great way to manage them. You can say and do group policies. So this is there are 3 types of authentication methods that you must be aware of, even though technically there are 5, but there's 3 that you need to know. Also, when you hear the word multi-factor authentication, like I was telling Eddie Dong, means I'm using different methods of authentication. So the most common one is something that you know, which is your password, or your PII, or your pattern lock, or some kind of security question, something that you know yourself.
Right.
Right? And then the second one is something that you have, which is the hardware token. It could be hardware or software. Like in the case of Eddie Dong, it was a software token that they emailed to him, or it could be stored on your computer. In my case, I have a key fob, or I have another device that I just push, and it gives me a code, one-time password that I use. That's something that I have in my possession, or it could be a smart card to enter a building. And then the third one, that of the 3 main one, is something that you are, which is biological features. In this case, is your fingerprint, your iris, your retina, your facial gestures. Some people are saying that signature patterns might be considered something that you are, because they believe that people's way of signing things might be unique. So these are the 3 main ones. However, there's this other 2, somewhere you are, like a geographic location. In other words, if I'm in China, the Bank of America might block my access to my account. And then the other one would be time of day, but you know, it's not on this slide in here, but time of day is important. In other words, why are you trying to get into the office computer at 1 a.m. in the morning? So it's not mentioned on here, but those are really the 5 main ones. There's a couple of, but the main 3 you need to know is something that you are, something that you have, and something that you know. Those are the 3 ones you need to be aware of as authentication factors. So when I say multi-factor, or in this case of Eddie Dong, 2-factor authentication, it would mean signature, password, and that token. All right, well, on the last segment in here, so they have to be different. So just having 2 passwords is not multi-factor. Having entering my fingerprint and my eye is the same biological one. So I need different factor to have a multi-factor authentication. So single sign-on, if you notice, sometimes you can sign on to like Zoom through Facebook, or you can sign on to your computer using your Microsoft account and you have access to your Microsoft Drive. Those are single sign-on. You see a new terminology here, Kerberos, but my security guys know what Kerberos is. It's based on that three-headed dog from Greek mythology. Kerberos is usually more for what I call symmetric encryption or symmetric authentication. But single sign-on just means I sign on to one and I can get into another service. Multiple services by signing into one. It's for convenience, but you can see something here now. If I hack into one system, I can get into another one. So it provides a single point of failure. That's the disadvantage. All right, so encryption in here quickly. I don't want to spend too much time here, but let me just explain these three things in here on the bottom here. Hashing goes with what is called, and then symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption, because it's confusing even for people who are more experienced. Encryption just means I take something that is easily readable or recognizable, and I apply some kind of algorithm here, and I now make it unreadable. So I encrypt it, meaning you cannot read it. So to be able to read it, you have to decrypt it, right? Hashing is more like a message digest. Hashing, we say, is one way. Encryption is two ways, meaning you go to encrypt and then decrypt. So that's enough for that one. All I got to tell you is that symmetric encryption is what you usually use with your logging in. It's one key. I use the same key to encrypt and the same key to decrypt. Log on to your password, right? Don't get stuck with all this other blowfish, twofish. And then, but the key size, if you hear me say for Wi-Fi, that a 256-bit encryption is the best. That's what I'm talking about. The size of the key used to encrypt. All right, asymmetric. All you need to know about asymmetric is you have two keys. You have a public key and a private key. Don't get stuck anymore about that. That's what I want you to know here. Just public and private key. And then usually asymmetric key, you hear them talk about PKI, public key infrastructure. I should mention something in here. Remember I talked about digital certificate yesterday and certification authority? That's what it's talking about in this portion here. So you have a digital certificate, remember, issued by a certification authority. That authority has already verified my identity that I'm Alex. So that my certificate says, hey, that's my Alex's public key. And they sign my public key to make sure that I'm legitimate. All right, so, but don't worry about this other stuff, just general terminology, they're not going to take section. So digital signature, the distinction here, I want you to know this. I need to explain this part here before we wrap up this section here, because this is just general, because you're going to see something about digital certificate. So on here, look at these two things in here. What is a digital certificate used for? I use it to authenticate myself, to prove who I am, and also to protect confidentiality, make sure that only Alex can see that document, or only the person that is meant to will see it. So you remember that I said for the CIA triad, I have confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So now I see digital signature, which is like my own signature. How does somebody know how's Alex signing a document? Is to make sure that my document is authentic and that I sent it, I signed it. All right, so this one in here, will require me to start going into symmetric encryption, but just know this part. I just know that there's something called digital certificate and digital signature. I don't expect, if you're going to take the exam, they're not going to ask you about that. So hash, also hashing, like if I send you a file, I will hash the file. The most common one is SHA, now SHA-1, or MD5, message digest. So you got a better one now, SHA-2. So those are ways to create hashes. All it does is prove, if I send you a file, you receive the file, I should have sent you a hash of the file. So when you get the file at your end, you should also try and use the same hashing algorithm like MD5, compare the value that you're going to get with the value that I sent you to make sure that somehow somebody has not changed the document in transit. Again, hashing, symmetric and asymmetric encryption are part of advanced cryptography or cybersecurity or cryptology. Any question? I'm trying to wrap up here because it's time here, but I'm going to answer the more complicated questions for anybody afterwards. All right. Oh, I need to explain the state of data. So data has three states. Data at rest means it's stored, data in transit, and data that is being, okay, so here, data in motion, which, because this has to do with encryption. So if I'm sending you data, I need to worry about whether or not it's encrypted. Data that I stored on my folder is data at rest, stored in my media. So that one I need to encrypt now so that if somebody steals it, they cannot use it. And then the one that is not on here is data in use, data that I'm processing. All right, so VPN, virtual private network, all you need to know about that is it enables me to have a secure tunnel to get to like my company devices or to protect my information or my networking when I'm in a public domain or in an untrusted domain. Just know that password cracking, there are different ways to crack your password. We have tools like Cain and Abel, John the Ripper, but most common way to crack a password is using a dictionary attack or brute force. Dictionary, I just go through and I look for a bunch of words because I know sometimes people use different words to identify their password. So I can find from a dictionary, or I can also use a rainbow table. It's not mentioned on here. Rainbow table just means I have other hashes and I'm comparing it. But brute force approach just means I keep trying and trying and trying until I get through. So the solution to this is to have account lockout. So I say, okay, after you try 3 times, I lock you out for like a minute or 5 minutes before you can try again. All right. So password best practice, always make sure don't use dictionary words, use long ones, combination, as I said last time, numbers, letters, and characters. All right. Don't worry about this password management. I'm just telling you here, please don't write down your password. All right. And then basically, behavioral security concept here is just to tell you that companies should have policies, standards, and procedures on how to handle security. This includes when you're hiring somebody, when you're firing somebody, and when you discipline people. And this one's here is just about acceptable use policy. Just know what your company says about how you can use their network, what you can do and what you cannot do while you're on company property. Somebody asked a question from my PMI presentation 2 days ago about watching your employees. So if I've got people that are working in my company, how do I know that they're putting in 8 hours a day because of remote work? Usually you have to put cameras, like 360-degree cameras. But how do I deal with privacy issues? Expectations of privacy. You have to balance all those things, all right? So metadata, remember, it's data about data. If you are using my company's network and you're on the internet, you're basically allowing me to follow your social networking. And be careful what you do while you're on company properties, because your company has a right to see everything that you're doing. That's in the summary here. Now we can take questions. 11:04. Let's get back. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All right. So questions. Is everybody unmuted? Let's make sure everybody's unmuted. All right. Good.
I made in beginning.
Yeah?
I made mine on beginning.
Yes, so I've unmuted everybody. So what we've done here is go through the 5 modules of, sorry, nobody has any question, right? So let me explain something else. All right, good. If you're going to take the ITF class, IT Fundamentals class, towards the test, we've covered a lot of stuff in a big textbook. I would suggest that you take a week to review before you go online and schedule the test. No matter your level of IT knowledge, I know it's $123. I suggest you add the IT Fundamental certification to your kettle of credentials. and it's available. Everybody that's on this class, because I went and checked your different countries, it's available for all the countries in here. Nobody here is excluded. There are some countries that you cannot do it. So try and do the online exam. Take a week to review, and I would suggest you probably buy the ebook, which I think is now at discount at like $59 or something, and then review. But if you cannot do that, just ask me. I have lots of questions. I have thousands of question banks I can send to you, elementary, advanced, and you can use it to study, to prepare for the exam. And then you just sit down in your house there and you take the exam. The IT fundamentals credentials does not expire. Like if I tell you, let's see here, I'm going to share my screen in a minute, but let's get out of this so I can get to I'm surfing the net while I'm talking to you. I'm going to say jobs for IT fundamentals. And I'm going to show you on the screen. But if you go to CompTIA site, my system is a little slow here, so let's go back on here, and then I'm going to go back and share my screen again. I want to share, let's share my screen, and I want to show you. So I'm going to do a search and tell you. So it's good to do the exam. Let's wait till the screen is not responsive. While that is coming up, we went to comptia.org the other day. So we were at comptia.org. Somehow my network is having some issues today. Over here in Frederick, we're having the weather seems fine. But the point is that it's a certification that you should add to your
You cannot open the page because it's a www dot.
Yeah, let's go back to. Let's go back. Hold on, let me bring this one here. Let's get out of the Zoom one. Let me reduce some of my.
Yep.
Okay, let's go back here. So I said www.comptia.org.
Yes, now.
And let's go. That one is still loading. And if I went to Google,
That one will never even stay on that one. So just
yeah. So let me get out of this schedule here. So the point is that I'm going to post for you. I'm going to make a note on here for myself to post what I call an IT career pathway and the certifications from CompTIA. And these are good certifications for you to have. I think it will help you in your IT career and then build more. And I'm also going to post the classes that are starting in the next, not some next week, but not being taught by me, and then in 2 weeks' time that I'm teaching. And then you can see which one that you think you want to select. I hope you took that test, a general test, to get an idea about your IT career path or acumen, and then you can decide what is better suited for you. But please do the exam, and then let's see, did the screen come up? Not yet. All right. All right. So any other question before I log off?
So Alex, Ron here. I just wanted to get it clear. Like I thought we were doing an exam today.
Yes, you're gonna get an exam from me. I'm still working on it. Yes.
So is that the ITF Plus?
No,
exam?
no. The ITF one you have to pay $123 for.
Oh, okay.
You have to pay to CompTIA.
So the exam we're doing today is what?
It's a comprehensive exam on the materials covered here, which will help you in doing the IT Fundamentals Plus exam also.
Okay. So there's another one, IT Plus, right?
ITF Plus.
ITF Plus is the first level.
Yes.
And then it goes into what level?
Then you have A Plus. Right. Let's see if it's coming up. But I'll post it on there. So normal the career progression that we recommend for people: do the ITF Plus, do the A Plus, do the Network Plus, do the Security Plus, and then from the Security Plus you could do the CYSA Plus. You do the CSP Plus, which is the highest one for cybersecurity. But usually when after people take the A Plus, some people decide they want to go and do other stuff like project management, or which is they could go do this the Project Plus. They They can go and do the Linux. They can go and do.
What is the A+ certification? What is the course? What it mean of A+? What it is this?
Okay, so A+ is we call it the most popular IT certification to get a job as a help desk, desktop, and then also to enter into a career in IT involving either software or hardware. And a lot of companies, I don't know why my system is slow today, but a lot of companies will allow you to get a job and use it to enter into the company. So even if you're going to be an IT manager, it's a good certification to have because it gives you a broad knowledge about IT. But like some of the stuff that we talked about today in the last 5 days, it goes more in depth.
You go more in depth on software and in our hardware, correct?
Yes. So it's like some schools teach it for 400 hours. I teach it at the community college either for 6 weeks, or I'm also teaching it at another school for 8 weeks, but it's more compressed. Usually you need at least about 140 hours to, which is like 3 to 4 weeks for good preparation. Or if you take our own like kind of boot camp, we use software that is what like 300-hour software and the book. So we use test out and you prepare for it. It expires every 3 years, but the reason why it has the plus at the end of it is it means you can take the continuing education to renew the certification. The reason, because research shows that IT, new technology comes up minimum every 3 years, so you need to be up to speed on it. And then
thank you.
Yeah, so it's a great course that I recommend for everybody, even whether you have a degree in computer science or not. It's good to try and get it. It's a difficult exam. So, Bree, you want to comment about it because you took it? You know? No.
So I have just a follow-up question on that. When you are certified under these programs, right? This is a particular vendor that develops IT training programs. You do need other prerequisites like college courses and stuff like that in order to support your entry into the workforce. This is not going to do it all, right? So
no. The A+ is considered a substitute for like 6 months in some places, or 12 months in some places for entry job into IT, and they don't require a college degree. So in Maryland here, like before, like 3 years ago, I was with the U.S. government with Leidos. They offered, or during the Obama administration, which is what Desiree knows about it, they offered grants for people to maybe change careers and get into IT. So we had people from 18 years to over 60 years old that applied for the grant and got trained, and you didn't need a college degree. So if you're trying to entry-level job, like when you call a help desk and you have a software problem or you have a hardware problem, it is preferable that the person have the A+ certification to get into to do the work on your system.
Absolutely.
And it's vendor neutral. And also, if you're going to teach A+ class, we tend to say, please make sure that your instructor has the A+, because it teaches you more than you would probably use in a job environment, but because it's practical, not just theory too, there are virtual labs, it makes you sure that you have the knowledge. So, but it's not just for working on a desktop. I've had students who, for one reason or the other, they do it so they can open their own IT business.
Right, it seems to be pretty comprehensive, right? So I'm pretty impressed so far. So, all right, thanks a lot, Alex.
All right. Any other question?
Yes. This is Hugo. Trying to see if it's possible to send the questions. You say you have a lot of questions you can send to us.
Yes. So you send me an email and tell me what, like if you think you're weak in some area, you ask me, right? although I mean, I'm not going to send you thousands of questions. Now, like you tell me, for example, hey, I want to learn more. I'm weak on mobile devices. Can you send me some questions so I can test my knowledge of web mobile devices?
Okay.
But just in general, cybrary.it has a few review-free things that you can do. Quizlets, Quizlet, Quizlets have some stuff that you can review. Just be careful because I've noticed some of the questions on Quizlet might not necessarily be correct, but there's a lot of places to get general IT knowledge. And if you have a library card, like in Florida there, right? Right?
Yeah.
You're in Miami, correct?
Yes.
So Dade County Public Library, if you get a library card, most of the libraries have an arrangement with some of the vendors where you can get IT classes for free or very reduced. Like lynda.com, for those of us in Maryland, you can take some classes from lynda.com for free. But to really prepare for the A+ exam, I think you need to take a course. And you need to do labs, because where you can take the IT fundamentals exam, you don't have labs, but the A+ class, because I've got 2 people on here that have done, like Desiree. Desiree can also chime in and Brie can chime in. The A+ class requires simulations and labs. And if you don't have practice, you're going to get lost in it. Desiree, am I right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, Brie?
Yeah,
Yeah, so.
very right.
But it's a great thing to get in your resume, and then you can start looking for IT job or start working for yourself, or go further. Just because you have the A+ doesn't mean that you need to end up in A+. You just do the A+, because the A+ has a security section, a cloud section, networking section, a hardware section, and of course, operating system section. You can finish that and decide, hey, I want to become a Microsoft certified system engineer. I just need the A+ as a background. Or I want to be a cloud architect. So I'm just using that. I'm not just going to go and concentrate on Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud Platform, and then you get those other necessary certifications. So it just enables you to get the knowledge and then specialize in other areas.
Okay.
All right, guys?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so bear with me. The exams hopefully will be on, and then I'm going to extend the due date, because if it doesn't come up tonight, you have it due by Sunday, and then you can get your certificate by Monday while Bree's preparing them and stuff, all right?
Thank you very much, Alex. It was a great course, and I appreciate your work and your effort on this. Okay?
Thank you, Alex.
Very much.
Hey, guys. Oh, before I forget, so the Python, Paulo, is okay to say? So we have advanced intro Python classes coming on. Paulo hopefully is going to teach one of the Python classes, and then logical operation is teaching another Python. We have cybersecurity, and I'm teaching other classes. So we're working on the schedule, and I'll send it to everybody, all right?
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yes, sir. Don't forget to send the link for
what?
ITF, for ITF exam. For people who want to study.
Yeah, I'll send it, yes. I'll send more stuff on Blackboard. All right, guys. All right.
Thank you so much.
And then,
Bye.